a single father living a quiet life with his daughter. One rainy night, a stranger appears at his door, injured, desperate, alone. He brings her in, offers shelter, never knowing she was sent to destroy everything he's built. When the truth comes out, he's forced to choose: walk away from the woman he's started to trust, or risk losing the only stability his daughter has ever known. This is a story about betrayal dressed as kindness, about choosing love over power, and about whether someone who came to ruin you can become the reason you believe again. Stay until the end, hit like, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Ryan Adler had never been the kind of man who left windows open at night. Not in this neighborhood, not with a 6-year-old daughter asleep down the hall. But on that particular Thursday in late September, the apartment had been suffocating, the ancient AC unit wheezing its last breath somewhere around 9 p.m., and he'd cracked the living room window just enough to let the cool air slip through. He regretted it the moment he heard the sound. It wasn't loud. A scrape, metal on concrete, followed by a muffled thud that could have been a trash bag hitting pavement, or something heavier. Ryan sat up from the couch where he'd been half watching a rerun of some cop show he didn't care about, muting the TV with one hand while his other instinctively reached for his phone. Silence. Then a groan. Low, pained, unmistakably human. He was on his feet before he'd decided to move, crossing the small living room in 3 strides and peering through the window. The streetlight outside flickered like it always did, casting uneven shadows across the narrow alley that separated his building from the next. At first he saw nothing. Then movement. A figure slumped against the brick wall near the dumpster, one hand pressed to their side. Ryan's jaw tightened. His first thought was drunk. His second was not my problem. He had a daughter sleeping 20 feet away and a shift starting at 6 the next morning. The last thing he needed was to get involved in whatever mess was unfolding outside his window. But the figure shifted again, and this time he caught the outline clearly. Small frame, long hair plastered to their face. A woman. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. He grabbed his jacket off the back of the couch, shoved his phone into his pocket, and moved toward the door. He paused with his hand on the knob, glancing back toward the hallway where Lily's room sat dark and quiet. She was a heavy sleeper, thank God. He'd be back in 5 minutes. Less, if this turned out to be nothing. The air outside hit him cold and damp, remnants of an earlier rain still dripping from the fire escape above. Ryan moved quickly down the exterior stairs, his work boots loud against the metal grating. When he reached the alley, he slowed, keeping a few feet of distance between himself and the woman slumped against the wall. "Hey," he said, voice low but firm. "You all right?" She didn't look up. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. One hand still clutched her side, and even in the dim light, Ryan could see the dark stain spreading across her shirt. Blood. "Jesus," he breathed, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming at him to back off. "What happened to you?" She lifted her head then, just enough for him to catch her face. Young, mid-20s maybe. Pale skin, sharp cheekbones, eyes glassy with pain or shock or both. Her lips moved, forming words he couldn't quite hear. Ryan crouched down, bringing himself to her level. "I can't understand you. Are you hurt? Did someone do this?" "Fell," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stupid. I fell." He didn't believe her. The gash along her ribs didn't look like something you got from tripping over your own feet. It looked deliberate, like she'd been shoved into something sharp or dragged across rough concrete. But he also wasn't about to interrogate a bleeding woman in an alley at 11 at night. "Can you stand?" he asked. She nodded, though the movement seemed to cost her. Ryan slid an arm under hers, hauling her upright with more effort than he'd expected. She was lighter than she looked, all bone and tension, her body trembling against his. "I've got you," he said, more to himself than to her. "Come on." Getting her up the stairs was a nightmare. She could barely put weight on her left leg, and every step made her breath hitch in a way that set Ryan's teeth on edge. By the time they reached his door, his shirt was damp with her blood, and his patience was worn thin. He kicked the door shut behind them, guiding her toward the couch and lowering her down as gently as he could manage. She collapsed against the cushions, eyes fluttering closed. "Hey," Ryan said sharply, snapping his fingers near her face. "Stay awake. You might have a concussion." Her eyes opened again, unfocused but present. Sorry, she murmured. Don't apologize. Just don't pass out on me. He moved toward the kitchen, grabbing the first aid kit from under the sink, a battered plastic box he hadn't opened in months. When he returned, she was still conscious, staring up at the ceiling like she was trying to count the cracks in the plaster. Ryan set the kit on the coffee table and pulled up a chair, positioning himself in front of her. I need to see where you're bleeding. She hesitated, then slowly lifted the hem of her shirt. The cut along her ribs wasn't deep, but it was long and ugly, the edges ragged like she'd been scraped against something rough. Ryan exhaled through his nose, reaching for the antiseptic wipes. This is going to sting, he warned. She didn't flinch when he pressed the wipe to her skin, though her knuckles went white where she gripped the edge of the couch. Ryan worked quickly, cleaning the wound as best he could before taping a gauze pad over it. His hands were steady. Years of patching himself up after long shifts had taught him that much. But his mind was racing. Who was this woman? What had she been running from? And why the hell had he brought her into his home? What's your name? He asked, not looking up from his work. She was quiet for a moment, long enough that he thought she might not answer. Then, softly, Arya. Arya, he repeated, testing the weight of it. I'm Ryan. You got a last name, Arya? Another pause. Quinn. All right, Arya Quinn, you want to tell me what really happened out there? Her gaze slid away from him, fixing on some point across the room. I told you, I fell. Right. Ryan tied off the bandage and sat back, crossing his arms. You fell onto something sharp and decided the best place to recover was a back alley in the worst part of town. That about sum it up? I didn't have anywhere else to go. The words came out flat, emotionless, but there was something underneath them that made Ryan's chest tighten. He recognized that tone. He'd used it himself more times than he cared to count. You got family? He asked. Someone I can call? No. Friends? No. Ryan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. So you're telling me you're completely alone, bleeding in an alley, and you just happened to end up outside my window? Arya's jaw tightened. I didn't plan this. I'm not saying you did. I'm just trying to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do with you. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time since he'd found her, Ryan saw something other than pain in her expression. Fear, maybe, or desperation. You don't have to do anything, she said quietly. I'll leave in the morning. Ryan didn't answer right away. He should have agreed, should have told her to get out as soon as the sun came up and never look back. But something stopped him. Some stupid, stubborn part of himself that couldn't stand the idea of sending her back out into the cold with nothing but a bandage and a prayer. You can stay tonight, he said finally, but tomorrow you're gone. Understood? Arya nodded, relief flickering across her face so briefly he almost missed it. Understood. Ryan stood, gathering up the used wipes and bloody gauze. There's a blanket in the closet. Bathroom's down the hall if you need it. Don't touch anything, don't make noise, and for the love of God, don't go near my daughter's room. You have a daughter? He shot her a look sharp enough to cut. That's none of your business. Arya raised her hands in a gesture of surrender, wincing as the movement pulled at her side. I wasn't... Just stay on the couch, Ryan interrupted. We'll talk in the morning. He didn't wait for her response, turning on his heel and heading down the hall toward Lily's room. He eased the door open, peering inside to make sure she was still asleep. She was curled up under her blankets, clutching the stuffed rabbit she refused to sleep without, her breath soft and even. Ryan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Whatever mess he'd just dragged into his apartment, at least Lily was safe. That was all that mattered. He pulled the door shut again and retreated to his own room, leaving it cracked just enough that he'd hear if anything went wrong. He didn't bother changing out of his jeans, just kicked off his boots and stretched out on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. But he'd made it anyway, and now he had to live with it. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the apartment made him tense, half expecting to hear footsteps or the sound of the front door opening. But the night stayed quiet, and eventually, exhaustion pulled him under. When Ryan woke the next morning, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. He sat up, rubbing a hand over his face, and glanced at the clock on his nightstand. 5:30. He had half an hour before he needed to start getting Lily ready for school. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and padded down the hall, half expecting to find the couch empty and the front door wide open. But Arya was still there, curled up under the blanket he'd left out. Her face turned toward the back of the couch. She looked smaller in sleep, less guarded. Younger, too, like whatever weight she carried during the day had temporarily lifted. Ryan moved past her into the kitchen, starting a pot of coffee more out of habit than desire. The machine sputtered to life, filling the silence with its familiar hum. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and watched Arya's sleeping form through the doorway. "Who are you?" he thought. "And what the hell were you doing in that alley?" He didn't get the chance to ask. A few minutes later, the sound of small footsteps echoed down the hall, and Lily appeared in the doorway, her rabbit dragging behind her by one ear. She stopped when she saw Arya on the couch, her eyes going wide. "Morning, Lil," Ryan said, forcing a smile. Lily blinked up at him, her hair sticking up in every direction. "Daddy, there's a lady on the couch." Ryan's stomach dropped. He glanced toward the living room where Arya was stirring, her eyes blinking open in confusion. "Yeah," he said slowly, crouching down to Lily's level. "She's a friend. She needed a place to stay for the night." Lily tilted her head, studying him with the kind of scrutiny only a 6-year-old could manage. "She doesn't look like your friend." "Well, she is, sort of." Ryan stood, running a hand through his hair. "Go get dressed, okay? I'll make you breakfast in a minute." Lily nodded, though she cast one last curious glance toward Arya before disappearing back down the hall. Ryan exhaled, turning to find Arya sitting upright, the blanket pooled around her waist. She looked disoriented, like she'd forgotten where she was. "Sorry," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "I didn't mean to—" "It's fine," Ryan cut her off. "But you need to keep your voice down. My daughter doesn't need to know the details." Arya nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. "I'll leave as soon as—" "After breakfast," Ryan interrupted. "You look like you haven't eaten in days." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "Thank you," Ryan grunted, turning back to the coffee pot. He poured himself a cup, black, and took a long sip before setting it down on the counter. "You want some? If it's not too much trouble." He poured her a cup without comment, sliding it across the counter toward her. She stood slowly, favoring her uninjured side, and crossed the room to take it. Her hands wrapped around the mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "How's the cut?" Ryan asked, nodding toward her ribs. "Sore, but better." She took a sip of coffee, grimacing slightly at the bitterness. "You did a good job." "I've had practice." They stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the rhythmic drip of the coffee maker and the faint clatter of Lily rummaging through her dresser in the other room. Ryan studied Arya over the rim of his cup, taking in the details he'd missed the night before. The exhaustion etched into her features, the way she held herself like she was ready to bolt at any second, the faint bruising along her collarbone that hadn't come from a fall. "You in some kind of trouble?" he asked finally. Arya's gaze snapped to his, sharp and defensive. "No." "You're a terrible liar." She set her cup down on the counter, her jaw tightening. "I appreciate what you did for me last night, I really do, but my problems are my own." "Fair enough." Ryan drained the last of his coffee and set the cup in the sink. "But if those problems show up at my door, we're going to have a different conversation." "They won't," Arya said, though there was something in her voice that made Ryan think she wasn't entirely sure. Before he could press further, Lily reappeared, now dressed in mismatched socks and a shirt with a dinosaur on it. She climbed onto one of the kitchen chairs, swinging her legs and watching Arya with open curiosity. "Hi," Lily said brightly. Arya blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Hi. I'm Lily. What's your name?" "Arya." "That's a pretty name." Lily propped her chin in her hands, studying Arya with the same intensity she used when examining bugs on the sidewalk. "Are you staying for breakfast?" Arya glanced at Ryan, who shrugged. "If your dad says it's okay." Lily turned her wide-eyed gaze on him, and Ryan could already feel himself caving. "Can she, Daddy? Please?" Ryan sighed, knowing he'd already lost this battle. "Yeah, she can stay." Lily beamed, and Arya's expression softened in a way Ryan hadn't expected. For a moment, she almost looked normal, not like someone who'd been bleeding in an alley 12 hours ago. Ryan turned back to the stove, pulling out a carton of eggs and a loaf of bread. "Hope you like scrambled," he said over his shoulder. "Scrambled's fine," Arya replied. As he cracked eggs into a bowl, Ryan tried not to think about how easily she'd slipped into the rhythm of his morning, how Lily had taken to her without hesitation, how wrong it felt to have a stranger sitting at his table, and yet how right it looked. This was supposed to be temporary. One night, maybe two if he was feeling generous, but as he watched Arya smile faintly at something Lily said, he had the sinking feeling that temporary wasn't going to cut it. Breakfast passed in a blur of Lily's chatter and Arya's careful, measured responses. Ryan ate in silence, watching the two of them interact with a growing sense of unease. Lily was asking questions, innocent ones, the kind kids asked without thinking, and Arya was answering them, mostly. But every now and then she'd pause just a fraction too long, or her smile would slip, and Ryan would catch a glimpse of whatever she was hiding. "Do you have any kids?" Lily asked, scooping up a forkful of eggs. Arya shook her head. "No, just me." "Do you have a job?" "Not right now." "Where do you live?" Arya hesitated, her gaze flicking to Ryan. "I'm between places at the moment." Lily frowned, clearly trying to puzzle that out. "What does that mean?" "It means she doesn't have a home," Ryan said bluntly, cutting in before Arya could soften the truth. "Finish your breakfast, Lil. We need to leave in 10 minutes. Lily's frown deepened, but she didn't argue, turning her attention back to her plate. Arya's expression had gone carefully neutral, though Ryan thought he saw a flicker of something, anger, maybe, or shame, before she looked away. When Lily finished eating, she slid off her chair and carried her plate to the sink, standing on her tiptoes to set it on the counter. "Can Arya come with us to school?" she asked, turning to Ryan with hopeful eyes. "No," Ryan said immediately. "Why not?" "Because she's not coming with us. She's got things to do." Lily's face fell, and she turned to Arya. "Will you still be here when I get back?" Arya opened her mouth, then closed it again, glancing at Ryan. He didn't say anything, just held her gaze, waiting. "I don't know," Arya said finally. "Maybe." It wasn't the answer Lily wanted, but it seemed to satisfy her enough. She grabbed her backpack from the hook by the door and waited while Ryan pulled on his jacket. "Stay here," Ryan told Arya. "Don't answer the door. Don't leave. I'll be back in 20 minutes. Arya nodded, still standing by the counter with her arms wrapped around herself. "Okay." Ryan ushered Lily out the door, locking it behind them. As they descended the stairs, Lily tugged on his hand. "Daddy, why doesn't Arya have a home?" Ryan sighed, searching for an answer that wouldn't lead to more questions. "Sometimes people get stuck in bad situations, Lil. It's complicated. Can't she stay with us?" "No." "Why not?" "Because we don't know her." Lily was quiet for a moment, her small hand tightening around his. "I think she's nice." Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't, because the truth was he didn't know what Arya was. Nice didn't cover it. Neither did dangerous or lost or any of the other words tumbling through his head. They reached the school just as the first bell rang, and Ryan crouched down to give Lily a quick hug. "Be good, okay? I'll pick you up at 3. "Okay." Lily squeezed him tight, then pulled back, grinning. "Bye, Daddy." He watched her run toward the entrance, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders, before turning and heading back the way they'd come. His mind was already racing ahead, running through everything he needed to say to Arya when he got back. But when he opened the door to his apartment, the couch was empty. The blanket was folded neatly on the armrest, the coffee cup rinsed and sitting in the sink. And Arya was gone. Ryan stood in the doorway, staring at the empty space where she'd been, and felt something twist in his chest. Relief, maybe. Or disappointment. He wasn't sure which was worse. The rest of the day dragged. Ryan went to work, spent 8 hours hauling equipment and breaking his back under the late September sun, and came home sore and exhausted. He picked Lily up from school, made her dinner, helped her with her homework, and put her to bed. The whole time he kept expecting to see Arya sitting on the couch when he walked through the door. She wasn't. By the time Friday rolled into Saturday, Ryan had almost convinced himself she'd been a fever dream. Some hallucination brought on by too little sleep and too much stress. But then he found the bandage wrappers in the trash, and he knew she'd been real. He told himself it was for the best. She was gone. His life could go back to normal. But normal felt different now, quieter, emptier. Lily noticed too. She asked about Arya twice on Saturday and once on Sunday, and each time Ryan gave her the same answer. She had to go, Lil. She's not coming back. Lily accepted it, the way kids always did, but Ryan could tell she was disappointed. He was too, though he'd never admit it. Monday morning came, and with it, the usual routine. Ryan got Lily ready for school, made her breakfast, and walked her to the bus stop. He was on his way back to the apartment when he saw her. Arya. She was sitting on the front steps of his building, her arms wrapped around her knees, her face tilted toward the weak morning sun. She looked up when she heard his footsteps, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "You're back," Ryan said finally. Arya stood, brushing off the back of her jeans. "I didn't know where else to go." Ryan's jaw tightened. He should have told her to leave. Should have made it clear that whatever charity he'd extended on Thursday night was over. But instead, he found himself asking, "You eat yet?" Arya shook her head. "Come on, then." He jerked his head toward the door. "I've got leftover pancakes." She followed him inside without a word, and just like that, temporary became something else entirely. Over the next 2 weeks, Arya became a fixture in Ryan's life. She didn't ask to stay, not outright, but she didn't leave either, and Ryan, for reasons he couldn't quite articulate, didn't push her. At first it was awkward. Arya kept to herself, spending most of her time on the couch or staring out the window like she was waiting for something. But gradually, she started to settle. She'd help with small things, washing dishes, folding laundry, tidying up the living room. She never overstepped, never made herself too comfortable, but her presence became familiar. Lily adored her. That was the part Ryan hadn't anticipated. His daughter, who was usually shy around strangers, took to Arya like she'd known her forever. They'd sit together on the floor, building elaborate towers out of blocks, or flipping through picture books while Arya read aloud in a voice that was softer than Ryan had expected. "She's good with her," Ryan's coworker Marcus said one afternoon when Ryan mentioned it in passing. Ryan grunted, tightening a bolt on the scaffolding they were assembling. "Yeah, too good, maybe." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That a problem?" "I don't know yet." It should have been. Ryan knew that. He didn't know anything about Arya, where she'd come from, what she was running from, why she'd chosen his doorstep out of all the places in the city. Every time he tried to ask, she'd deflect or change the subject, and eventually he stopped pushing. But the questions didn't go away. They just simmered under the surface, waiting. One evening, about 10 days after Arya had come back, Ryan came home to find her sitting at the kitchen table with a newspaper spread out in front of her, a pen in her hand. She was circling job listings, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Looking for work?" Ryan asked, setting his keys on the counter. Arya glanced up, nodding. "Figured I should start pulling my weight." "You don't have to." "I want to," she interrupted. "I can't just sit here forever." Ryan studied her for a moment, trying to read the expression on her face. There was determination there, but also something else. Fear, maybe. Like she was afraid that if she didn't make herself useful, he'd kick her out. "All right," he said finally. "Let me know if you need help with anything." Arya nodded, turning back to the newspaper. Ryan watched her for a moment longer before heading down the hall to check on Lily, who was supposed to be doing homework but was probably playing with her toys instead. Sure enough, when he opened her door, she was sitting on the floor surrounded by stuffed animals, deep in conversation with a teddy bear. "Homework done?" Ryan asked, leaning against the doorframe. Lily looked up, guilty. "Almost." "Almost means no. I'll finish it after dinner," she promised. Ryan sighed, but he couldn't help the small smile tugging at his lips. "You better. Come on, let's see what we can scrounge up for food." They ended up making spaghetti together, Lily standing on a chair to help stir the sauce while Ryan boiled the pasta. Arya joined them halfway through, offering to set the table. It was such a simple thing, 3 people moving around a small kitchen, preparing a meal together, but it felt monumental in a way Ryan couldn't quite explain. When they sat down to eat, Lily dominated the conversation, as usual, telling them about her day at school in excruciating detail. Arya listened with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Lily's dramatic retellings. Ryan watched them both, something uncomfortable shifting in his chest. This felt too much like a family, like something real and lasting, and that terrified him. After dinner, Lily begged Arya to read her a bedtime story, and Arya agreed without hesitation. Ryan cleaned up the kitchen, listening to the sound of Arya's voice drifting down the hall, soft and rhythmic. By the time he finished, Lily was asleep, and Arya was back in the living room, curled up in the corner of the couch. "She out?" Ryan asked. Arya nodded. Fell asleep halfway through the second book. Ryan sat down in the armchair across from her, stretching his legs out. "She really likes you." "I like her too." Arya's voice was quiet, almost wistful. "She's a good kid." "Yeah, she is." Ryan hesitated, then asked, "You ever think about having kids of your own?" Arya's expression shuddered immediately. "No." The finality in her tone made it clear the subject was closed. Ryan didn't push, even though he wanted to. There were so many things he wanted to ask her, about her past, her family, the bruises he'd seen that first night, but every time he got close, she'd pull back, and he'd let her. Maybe he was a coward, or maybe he was just afraid of what he'd find if he dug too deep. 3 weeks in, Ryan came home late from a double shift to find Arya and Lily in the kitchen, flour dusted across the counter and chocolate chip cookies cooling on a wire rack. The smell hit him the moment he walked through the door, warm, sweet, achingly familiar. "Daddy!" Lily practically launched herself at him, wrapping her arms around his waist. "We made cookies! Try one!" Ryan glanced over her head at Arya, who was wiping her hands on a dish towel, her expression unreadable. There was flour in her hair and a smudge of chocolate on her cheek, and she looked more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "I wanted to." Arya set the towel down, her gaze steady. "Lily asked if we could bake something, and I figured, why not?" Ryan picked up one of the cookies, still warm, and took a bite. It was good. Better than good, actually. The chocolate was melty, the cookie itself perfectly chewy. He chewed slowly, trying to ignore the strange tightness in his chest. "They're great," he said finally. Lily beamed, bouncing on her toes. "Arya says we can make brownies next time." "We'll see," Ryan said, ruffling her hair. "Go brush your teeth. It's past your bedtime." Lily groaned but complied, dragging her feet as she headed down the hall. Ryan turned back to Arya, who was busy cleaning up the mess they'd made. "You really didn't have to do this," he said again. Arya paused, looking at him over her shoulder. "I know, but it was nice. Having something normal to do." Normal. Ryan turned the word over in his mind. When had this become normal? When had having Arya in his kitchen, baking cookies with his daughter, started to feel like something that belonged? "I got a job," Arya said suddenly, breaking the silence. Ryan straightened. "Yeah? Where?" "A diner about 10 blocks from here. Night shift mostly. It's not much, but it's something." "That's good," Ryan said, and he meant it. "Really good." Arya nodded, but she didn't look happy. She looked scared, like the idea of stepping out into the world again was more terrifying than staying hidden in his apartment. "When do you start?" Ryan asked. "Tomorrow night? You need me to watch Lily while you're working?" Arya blinked, clearly surprised. I hadn't thought about that." "Well, think about it now," Ryan said. "If you're working nights, you'll need somewhere to sleep during the day, and someone to make sure Lily's not burning the place down." A small smile tugged at Arya's lips. "She's not that bad." "You haven't seen her when she's unsupervised." They fell into an easy rhythm after that, cleaning up the kitchen side by side. It felt natural, almost comfortable, and Ryan found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. Later, after Lily had gone to bed and the apartment had settled into its usual nighttime quiet, Ryan found Arya sitting on the couch, her knees drawn up to her chest, staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Arya looked up, her eyes shadowed in the dim light. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" She was quiet for a long moment, her gaze dropping to her hands. "About how I got here. About all the choices that led to me sitting on your couch." Ryan moved into the room, sitting down on the opposite end of the couch. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really." Arya's voice was soft, almost apologetic. "But I probably should." Ryan waited, giving her space to find the words. "I grew up with money," Arya said finally. "A lot of it. My family, they're powerful, connected. The kind of people who don't hear no very often." Ryan's stomach tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "I was supposed to follow a certain path," Arya continued. "Go to the right schools, marry the right person, work for the family business. But I didn't want that. I wanted something real, something that was mine. So you left, Ryan guessed. Arya nodded. I left. And they didn't take it well. They've been looking for me, trying to bring me back. Ryan felt a chill run down his spine. Are you in danger? I don't know, Arya admitted. Maybe. Probably. But I can't go back. I won't. Ryan studied her, seeing the fear and determination warring in her expression. Does this have anything to do with why you were bleeding in that alley? Arya's jaw tightened. Maybe. It wasn't a real answer, but Ryan didn't push. He could see how much it had cost her to tell him even this much. You're safe here, he said finally, for as long as you need. Arya's eyes met his, and for a moment something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or trust. Thank you, she whispered. Ryan nodded, standing up. Get some sleep. You've got a long day tomorrow. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that Arya's past wasn't as far behind her as she wanted to believe. And when it caught up, he wasn't sure any of them would be ready. Arya started her job at the diner the next night, and the apartment felt strangely empty without her. Ryan got Lily ready for bed, helped her with her homework, and tucked her in. But the whole time he was acutely aware of Arya's absence. She came home around 3 in the morning, exhausted and smelling like grease and coffee. Ryan was still awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a beer he hadn't touched. You didn't have to wait up, Arya said, kicking off her shoes. Couldn't sleep, Ryan lied. Arya gave him a look that said she didn't believe him, but she didn't call him on it. Instead, she collapsed onto the couch with a groan, rubbing her feet. How was it? Ryan asked. Terrible. My feet are killing me. The cook's an asshole, and I spilled coffee on at least 3 customers. She laughed, but it sounded tired. But I made $60 in tips, so I guess it could be worse. Ryan smiled despite himself. You'll get the hang of it. Yeah. Arya leaned back against the cushions, closing her eyes. I hope so. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the hum of the refrigerator and the distant wail of a siren. Ryan watched Arya's face relax as exhaustion pulled her under, and he felt that strange tightness in his chest again. He was in trouble. He knew he was in trouble. Because somewhere along the line, Arya Quinn had stopped being a stranger and started being someone he couldn't imagine losing. And that scared the hell out of him. The rhythm they fell into over the next few weeks was fragile, built on routines that felt almost normal until Ryan stopped to think about them too hard. Arya worked nights at the diner, came home smelling like fryer grease and burnt coffee, and slept through most of the day on the couch. Ryan kept his construction job, picked Lily up from school, made dinner. They'd eat together when their schedules aligned, and when they didn't, they'd leave notes on the fridge or text updates about Lily's homework or what needed picking up from the store. It was domestic in a way that made Ryan's skin itch, not because it was bad, but because it felt too easy, like he'd forgotten how to be alone. Marcus noticed during their lunch break one Thursday, both of them sitting on a stack of lumber with sandwiches that had seen better days. You're different, Marcus said, unwrapping his turkey sub. Ryan looked up. What? Different. Lighter, maybe. Less like you're about to bite someone's head off. I don't bite people's heads off, Marcus snorted. Sure you don't. So what is it? You get laid or something? Jesus, Marcus. What? I'm just saying, you've been in a better mood. Figured something changed. Ryan took a bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly to buy himself time. I've got someone staying with me, temporarily. Yeah? Who? A friend. Marcus raised an eyebrow. A friend who's a woman? Does it matter? Depends. Is she hot? Ryan shot him a look that could have stripped paint. Marcus laughed, holding up his hands in surrender. All right. None of my business. But seriously, man, it's good to see you not carrying the weight of the world for once. Ryan didn't answer. He wasn't sure he agreed. Because the truth was, the weight hadn't gone anywhere. It had just shifted. Now, instead of worrying about making rent and keeping Lily fed and whether he'd thrown his back out for good this time, he was worrying about Arya, about the shadows that crossed her face when she thought no one was looking, about the way she flinched whenever a car backfired or someone knocked too loud on the door, about what would happen when whatever she was running from finally caught up. That night, Ryan came home to find Arya sitting at the kitchen table with Lily, helping her with a math worksheet. They were both bent over the paper, Arya's finger tracing along a row of numbers while Lily chewed on the end of her pencil. If you have 12 apples and you give away 5, Arya was saying, how many do you have left? Lily scrunched up her nose. 7? Exactly. See, you're getting it. Lily beamed and Arya smiled back. A real smile, the kind Ryan had only seen a handful of times. It made her look younger, softer. Hey, Ryan said from the doorway. Both of them looked up. Lily jumped out of her chair and ran over to hug him, nearly knocking him off balance. Daddy, Arya's helping me with my homework. I can see that. Ryan glanced over Lily's head at Arya, who was gathering up the papers. How's it going? She's doing great, Arya said. Just needed someone to walk her through it. Ryan nodded, setting his lunch cooler on the counter. Thanks. No problem. Lily tugged on his hand. Can we have tacos for dinner? We had tacos 2 days ago. So, tacos are the best. Ryan sighed, but he was already mentally cataloging what they had in the fridge. Fine. Go wash your hands. Lily whooped and ran off down the hall. Arya stood, stretching her arms over her head with a wince. Your back bothering you again? Ryan asked. Arya shrugged. Little bit. Standing all night doesn't help. You should see a doctor. Can't afford it. Ryan frowned. The diner doesn't have insurance? Not for part-timers. Arya moved past him into the kitchen, pulling open the fridge. You need me to start dinner? I've got a couple hours before my shift. I've got it. You should rest. I'm fine, Ryan. But she didn't look fine. She looked tired. Bone-deep tired. The kind that sleep couldn't fix. Ryan watched her pull out the ground beef in a half-empty jar of salsa, her movements automatic. Arya. She paused, looking at him. You don't have to do this, Ryan said quietly. You don't have to run yourself into the ground trying to prove you're useful. Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or hurt. I'm not... Yeah, you are. And I get it. But you're already helping. More than you know. Arya set the ground beef on the counter, her hands gripping the edge. I don't want to be a burden. You're not. You don't know that. Yeah, I do. Ryan moved closer, close enough that he could see the shadows under her eyes, the tension in her jaw. You've been here almost a month, and things have been better. Easier. Lily's happy. He stopped, searching for the right words. I'm not doing this alone anymore. That counts for something. Arya's eyes searched his face, like she was trying to figure out if he meant it. Okay, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan nodded, stepping back, ma'am. Okay, now sit down before you fall down. A small smile tugged at her lips. Bossy. Yeah, well, someone's got to keep you in line. They made dinner together anyway, moving around the small kitchen in a dance they'd perfected without realizing it. Arya chopped vegetables while Ryan browned the meat, and Lily set the table, chattering about a girl in her class who'd brought a pet hamster for show and tell. It felt normal. It felt right. And that's what scared Ryan most of all. Later that night, after Arya had left for work and Lily was asleep, Ryan sat on the couch with his laptop, scrolling through job listings even though he knew he wasn't going to apply to any of them. His phone buzzed. A text from Arya. Cook burned himself. Might be late. Ryan typed back. You good? Yeah, just chaos. Talk later. He set the phone down, staring at the screen without really seeing it. He thought about Arya standing in a chaotic kitchen, dealing with burns and orders and customers who probably didn't tip enough. He thought about her coming home at 3 a.m. with blisters on her feet and a smile she forced because she didn't want him to worry. He thought about how much he wanted to fix it and how little power he had to do so. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus. Drinks tomorrow? You look like you need one. Ryan almost said no, but then he thought about sitting in this apartment alone, waiting for Arya to come home, and he typed back, yeah, sure. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe he did need to get out of his own head for a while. The next evening, Ryan found himself at a dive bar 3 blocks from his apartment, nursing a beer that tasted like it had been sitting in the tap lines too long. Marcus was on his second whiskey, already loosening up in the way he always did after a long week. So, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, you going to tell me about this mystery woman? Or do I have to drag it out of you? Ryan took a sip of his beer. Not much to tell. Bullshit. You've been distracted for weeks. Either she's the best thing that ever happened to you, or she's about to ruin your life. Which is it? Ryan set his beer down, wiping the condensation off his hands. I don't know yet. Marcus studied him, his expression sobering. You like her. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Marcus leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. Look, man, I've known you long enough to know you don't let people in easy. So if you're letting this girl stick around, there's a reason. Ryan didn't answer. He stared at his beer, watching the bubbles rise to the surface. Just be careful, Marcus said. People who show up out of nowhere, they leave the same way. She's not going anywhere. You sure about that? Ryan wanted to say yes, wanted to believe it with the same certainty he felt when he looked at Lily and knew he'd do anything to protect her. But the truth was, he wasn't sure. He didn't know what Arya wanted or what she was hiding or how long she'd stay before whatever she was running from finally found her. No, he admitted. I'm not sure. Marcus nodded, like that was the answer he'd expected. Then maybe you should ask her, before you get in too deep. Ryan finished his beer in silence, Marcus's words echoing in his head long after they'd paid the tab and gone their separate ways. When he got home, Arya was already there, sitting on the couch with her shoes kicked off and her feet propped up on the coffee table. She looked up when he walked in, offering a tired smile. Hey, how were drinks? Fine. Ryan hung his jacket on the hook by the door. You get off early? Manager sent me home, said I looked like death. You kind of do. Arya laughed, but it was thin. Thanks. Ryan sat down on the opposite end of the couch, the space between them feeling wider than it should. Can I ask you something? Arya's smile faded. That depends. On what? On whether I'm going to want to answer. Ryan hesitated, then pushed forward. How long are you planning to stay? Arya went still. For a long moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at her hands, her fingers twisting together. I don't know, she said finally. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Her voice was quiet, strained. I didn't plan any of this, Ryan. I didn't plan to end up in your alley or in your apartment or... She stopped, shaking her head. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to survive. And when you figure it out, Ryan pressed, when you're done surviving, what then? Arya looked at him and there was something raw in her eyes, something that looked a lot like fear. I don't know, she repeated. I'm sorry. I know that's not fair to you or Lily, but it's the truth. Ryan wanted to be angry, wanted to tell her that she couldn't just drift through their lives without a plan, without some kind of commitment, but he couldn't, because he understood what it was like to take things one day at a time, to live in survival mode with no room for anything else. Okay, he said. Arya blinked. Okay. Yeah, okay. Ryan stood, running a hand through his hair. But if that changes, if you decide you need to leave, just tell me. Don't disappear. I won't, Arya said, and Ryan wanted to believe her. But Marcus's words were still fresh in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that someday soon he'd come home to find the couch empty and Arya gone for good. The following week brought a shift Ryan hadn't anticipated. Arya started coming home with stories, small ones at first, little anecdotes about difficult customers or funny mishaps in the kitchen. But gradually, she opened up more. Talked about the regulars who left good tips, the waitress who covered for her when she mixed up orders, the cook who'd burned himself and still showed up the next day with his hand bandaged. She was building a life. Not just existing in Ryan's apartment, but actually carving out a space for herself in the world. Ryan should have been happy about that. And he was, mostly. But there was a part of him, small and selfish, that worried what would happen when she didn't need him anymore. One Saturday afternoon, Lily convinced Arya to take her to the park. Ryan stayed behind, claiming he had chores to do, but really he just wanted the apartment to himself for an hour. He cleaned the kitchen, did a load of laundry, and was halfway through fixing the leaky faucet in the bathroom when his phone rang. Unknown number. Ryan almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Is this Ryan Adler? The voice on the other end was smooth, professional, male. Yeah, who's this? My name is Colin Reeves. I'm calling on behalf of Quinn Development Corporation. I'm trying to locate someone, and I believe you might be able to help. Ryan's grip on the phone tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do, Mr. Adler. We're looking for Aria Quinn. She's been missing for several weeks and her family is very concerned. Ryan's stomach dropped. I don't know anyone by that name. That's interesting, because according to our records, she's been staying at your address. Ryan felt ice slide down his spine. You've got the wrong guy. Mr. Adler, I understand you may feel protective, but Aria's family just wants her to come home. They're willing to compensate you for any trouble she's caused. I said you've got the wrong guy. Ryan's voice came out harder than he intended. Don't call this number again. He hung up before Colin could respond, his heart hammering in his chest. They knew. Whoever Aria was running from, they knew where she was. Ryan stared at his phone, trying to decide what to do. He could tell Aria, should tell Aria, but what would that accomplish? She'd panic, maybe run, and then Lily would ask questions he didn't have answers for. Or he could wait, see if they called again, see if this was a bluff or something worse. He was still standing there, frozen, when the front door opened and Lily's laughter filled the apartment. Daddy, we saw ducks. Ryan shoved his phone in his pocket and forced a smile. Yeah? How many? Like 100. Lily threw her arms wide. And Aria let me feed them even though the sign said not to. Ryan glanced at Aria, who had the decency to look sheepish. The sign was more of a suggestion. It was a rule. A loosely enforced rule. Aria kicked off her shoes, and Ryan could see dirt on her jeans where she'd probably knelt down next to Lily by the pond. We didn't hurt anything. Lily tugged on Ryan's hand. Can we go back tomorrow? We'll see. Ryan ruffled her hair. Go wash up. Dinner in an hour. Lily skipped off down the hall, leaving Ryan and Aria alone. Aria was watching him, her brow furrowed. You okay? She asked. Yeah, why? You look tense. Ryan turned away, heading into the kitchen. Just tired. Aria followed him. Ryan. I'm fine, Aria. You're a terrible liar. He spun around and the words were out before he could stop them. Someone called, looking for you. All the color drained from Aria's face. What? About 20 minutes ago, a guy named Colin Reeves said he worked for Quinn Development Corporation. Aria's hand went to her mouth. No. He said your family's looking for you, that they're worried. They're not worried, Aria said, her voice shaking. They're angry. There's a difference. Ryan stepped closer. What did you do, Aria? I left, that's all. I left. People don't hire investigators to track down someone who just left. Aria's eyes met his, and he saw fear there, real, visceral fear. My family doesn't take no for an answer. If they want me back, they'll do whatever it takes. Why do they want you back so badly? Aria looked away, her jaw tight. Because I know things they don't want getting out. Ryan felt his stomach turn. What kind of things? The kind that could destroy them. Aria wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't plan to use it. I just want it out. But they think I'm a threat. Are you? She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I don't know, maybe? Ryan ran a hand over his face, trying to process. So, what now? I need to leave. No! Aria's head snapped up. Ryan, I said no. You leave now. They'll just follow you somewhere else. At least here I can... He stopped, not sure how to finish the sentence. You can what? Aria's voice was sharp. Protect me? You don't even know what you're up against. Then tell me. I can't. Why not? Because the more you know, the more danger you're in. Aria's voice cracked. I never should have stayed. I should have left that first morning and never looked back. But you didn't. I know. Aria's shoulders sagged. I know. And now I've dragged you and Lily into this mess, and She pressed her hands to her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ryan wanted to be angry. Wanted to tell her she was right, that she should have left, that he didn't sign up for this. But looking at her, at the way she was falling apart right in front of him, all he felt was the overwhelming need to fix it. We'll figure it out, he said. Aria lowered her hands. What? We'll figure it out. Together. But you have to be honest with me. No more deflecting. No more half-truths. If we're going to deal with this, I need to know what we're dealing with. Arya stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Why would you do that? Why would you risk? Because Lily likes you. Because you've been helping with rent and groceries and homework. Because Ryan stopped, the truth sitting heavy on his tongue. Because I don't want you to leave. The silence that followed was deafening. Arya's eyes were wide, searching his face for something. Doubt, maybe, or insincerity. But Ryan meant every word, and he could tell she knew it. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay. That night, after Lily was asleep, Arya told Ryan everything. She told him about growing up in a family that measured worth in profit margins and political connections, about a father who built an empire on shady land deals, and a mother who turned a blind eye as long as the money kept coming, about brothers who learned early that loyalty to the family meant silence, no matter what you saw. She told him about the project in North Creek, a development deal that would displace hundreds of workers, shut down the rail yard, and turn the land into luxury condos no one in the neighborhood could afford, about how her father had bribed city officials, manipulated zoning laws, and buried environmental reports that would have stopped the whole thing. And she told him about the files she'd copied before she left. Emails, financial records, meeting notes, everything needed to prove what Quinn Development had done. I wasn't planning to use it, Arya said, her voice hollow. I just wanted insurance, something to keep them from coming after me. But now, she looked at Ryan, her eyes red-rimmed. Now I don't know if it's enough. Ryan sat back, trying to process. North Creek, that's where I work. Arya went pale. What? The rail yard. I've been working there for 3 years. Ryan, you knew. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. When you showed up here, you knew. No, I swear I didn't. Arya stood, pacing. It was random. I was running, and I didn't know where I was going, and I ended up in this neighborhood because it was far from my family's usual territory. I didn't know you worked there. I didn't know anything about you. Ryan wanted to believe her, but the timing felt too convenient. So it's just a coincidence. Yes. I know how that sounds, but it's the truth. Ryan stood, his mind racing. If Quinn Development was planning to shut down the rail yard, that meant his job was gone. Marcus's job. The jobs of everyone he'd worked alongside for years. And Arya had known about it the whole time. How long? He asked. What? How long until they pull the trigger on this development? Arya's throat worked. I don't know. A few months, maybe. They were waiting for the last permits to clear. And you were just going to sit here and watch it happen. I didn't know what else to do. Arya's voice broke. If I release the file, my family goes down. But so do I. They'll come after me with everything they have, and anyone connected to me. She looked at him, tears streaming down her face. I can't put you and Lily through that. Ryan felt something crack open in his chest. So what? You were just going to disappear one day? Leave us to figure it out on our own? I don't know. Maybe. I haven't been able to think past tomorrow. They stood there in the dim light of the living room, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down between them. Ryan thought about Lily asleep down the hall, about the life he'd built, fragile and hard-won, about how easily it could all come crashing down. You should have told me, he said finally. I know. We could have figured something out. I was scared. Arya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'm still scared. Ryan crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. She went rigid for half a second, then collapsed against him, her face pressed to his shoulder. He could feel her shaking, could feel the dampness of her tears soaking through his shirt. We'll figure it out, he said again, and this time he meant it as a promise. Arya pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes red and swollen. How? I don't know yet, but we will. She searched his face, and whatever she saw there made her nod. Okay. Okay. They stood like that for a long moment, neither of them willing to let go. And for the first time since she'd shown up bleeding in his alley, Ryan felt like they were on solid ground, even if that ground was about to crack wide open beneath them. The next morning, Ryan called in sick to work, the first time in 2 years, and spent the day trying to come up with a plan. Arya sat across from him at the kitchen table, the file she'd stolen pulled up on her laptop. If we release this, what happens? Ryan asked. Quinn development gets investigated, probably fined. My father might face criminal charges, depending on how far the prosecutors want to push. And you? I'd have to testify. Go public. My family would disown me. Possibly worse. Worse how? Arya's jaw tightened. My father doesn't forgive betrayal, and he has a lot of friends in a lot of places. Ryan leaned back in his chair. So we're talking about burning your life to the ground to save a rail yard. It's not just a rail yard, it's people's livelihoods, families. You said it yourself, you've been there 3 years. How many others have been there longer? A lot? Arya nodded. Then it's worth it. Is it? Ryan met her eyes. Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one taking all the risk. And you're the one who'd lose everything if I don't. They stared at each other across the table, the laptop screen casting pale light on Arya's face. She looked exhausted, determined, and despite everything, despite the lies and the danger and the impossible choice she was offering him, Ryan had never respected anyone more. There has to be another way, he said. I've been looking for one for weeks. I can't find it. Ryan scrubbed a hand over his face. What if we talk to them? Your family. Negotiate. They don't negotiate. Everyone negotiates. Arya shook her head. You don't understand. My father would rather lose the deal than let me walk away. It's not about the money. It's about control. Ryan thought about the voice on the phone. Colin Reeves, smooth and professional, offering compensation like Arya was a lost package instead of a person. He thought about what kind of people would hire someone like that. What kind of family would chase their own daughter instead of letting her go? Then we don't give him a choice, Ryan said. Arya frowned. What do you mean? We make the file public, not all of it, just enough to get attention. Put pressure on them to back off. If they know you're willing to burn it all down, maybe they'll think twice about coming after you. That's a huge gamble. So is doing nothing. Arya was quiet for a long moment, her fingers drumming against the table. It could work, she said slowly. But it could also make things worse. Things are already worse, Ryan pointed out. At least this way we're making the first move. Arya looked down at her laptop, at the years of secrets contained in a single file. Ryan could see the war playing out in her expression, fear against hope, self-preservation against doing what was right. Okay, she said finally, let's do it. Ryan nodded, feeling the weight of the decision settle on his shoulders. They were crossing a line now, no going back. But as he looked at Arya, at the woman who'd stumbled into his life and somehow become part of it, he knew they were making the right choice, even if it cost them everything. They spent the next 2 days going through the file line by line, trying to figure out what to release and what to hold back. Arya knew the documents inside and out. She'd been the one to compile them, after all. But Ryan asked questions she hadn't considered. Which officials were bribed? How much money changed hands? Whether there was proof of environmental violations that could get federal agencies involved. Here, Arya said, pointing to an email chain on the screen. This is where my father's lawyer discusses payments to a city councilman. $50,000 to fast-track the zoning variance. Ryan leaned in, reading over her shoulder. That's enough to get someone arrested. Maybe, if anyone cares enough to investigate. Arya scrolled down. And here, these are the environmental impact assessments they buried. Soil contamination, groundwater issues. They knew the land wasn't safe to build on, but they did it anyway. Ryan's jaw tightened. How many people are going to live in those condos? Projected? About 300 units. 300 families moving into buildings on contaminated land. Ryan sat back, running his hands through his hair. That's not just corruption. That's criminal negligence. That's my family. Arya's voice was flat. That's what they do. Ryan looked at her, really looked at her. He'd seen her exhausted, scared, broken down. But this was different. This was resignation. Like she'd accepted that the people who raised her were capable of destroying lives without losing sleep over it. You're not them, Ryan said. Arya's laugh was bitter. I'm exactly them. I knew what they were doing, and I said nothing. I went to their meetings, sat at their dinner table, took their money. And then you left, Ryan interrupted. You took this file and you walked away. That counts for something. Does it? Arya closed the laptop, her hands trembling. Because from where I'm sitting, all I did was save myself. I didn't think about the people who'd lose their jobs or the families who'd be poisoned by bad construction. I just ran. You're thinking about them now. Only because you made me. Ryan reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Doesn't matter how you got here. You're here, and you're trying to fix it. Arya stared at their hands, her throat working. What if it's not enough? Then we'll figure out what is. She looked up at him, and Ryan saw something shift in her expression, something that looked like trust, fragile and new. You really believe that, don't you? Yeah, Ryan said. I do. Arya turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. They sat like that for a long moment, the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on both of them. Then Lily's voice called from the living room, asking if anyone wanted to play cards, and the moment broke. But Ryan didn't let go of Arya's hand right away, and she didn't pull back. That night, after Lily was asleep, they made their move. Arya uploaded a portion of the file to a secure server, then sent anonymous tips to 3 local news stations and 2 investigative journalists who'd covered corporate corruption before. The emails were vague, just enough to point them in the right direction without revealing who'd sent them. Now what? Ryan asked, watching Arya hit send on the last message. Now we wait. Arya closed the laptop, her face pale in the dim light. It could take days for anyone to follow up, or they might ignore it completely. They won't ignore it, not with this much evidence. You'd be surprised what people ignore when there's money involved. Arya stood, pacing the length of the living room. My father has connections everywhere. Reporters, editors, politicians. If he finds out about this before it goes public, he'll bury it. Then we make sure it goes public first. Arya stopped pacing, turning to look at him. How? Ryan thought for a moment. Social media. If the journalists don't bite, we leak it ourselves, post it everywhere we can think of, make it too big to ignore. That's risky. My father would know it came from me. He already knows you have the file. That's why he's looking for you. Arya's hands curled into fists. If we do this, there's no going back. My family will come after me with everything they have, and anyone who helped me. I know the risks, Ryan cut her off. I'm still in. Why? The word came out raw, almost desperate. Why are you doing this? Ryan stood, crossing the room to stand in front of her. Because it's the right thing to do. Because those people at the rail yard deserve to know what's coming. Because... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Because you asked for help. And I'm not the kind of person who walks away from that. Arya's eyes searched his face, and Ryan could see her fighting to hold it together. I don't deserve you. Yeah, you do. Ryan reached up, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. You deserve a hell of a lot more than what your family gave you. Arya's breath hitched. For a moment, Ryan thought she might cry, but instead she leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and kissed him. It wasn't soft or tentative. It was desperate, fierce, like she was trying to pour everything she couldn't say into that single moment. Ryan froze for half a second, caught off guard, then kissed her back just as hard. When they finally pulled apart, both of them breathing hard, Arya's hands were fisted in his shirt. Sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have... Don't apologize. Ryan's voice was rough. Just don't. Arya nodded, her forehead resting against his. They stood like that, tangled together in the dark, until the reality of what they'd just done started to sink in. Ryan was the first to pull away, taking a step back to put some distance between them. We should get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be long. Arya nodded, her cheeks flushed. Yeah, okay. But as Ryan lay in bed later that night, staring at the ceiling, he knew sleep wasn't coming anytime soon. He kept replaying the kiss in his mind, kept feeling the weight of Arya's hands on his chest, the way she'd looked at him like he was something worth holding on to. He was in way over his head. He knew that. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't care. The next morning brought the first response. A reporter from a local news station called Arya's burner phone, the one she'd used to send the tips, asking for more information. Arya put him on speaker so Ryan could listen. I received an anonymous email regarding Quinn Development Corporation, the reporter said. His name was David Chen, and he sounded young, eager. The attachments included some pretty serious allegations: bribery, environmental violations, zoning fraud. I need to verify the source before I can move forward. The source is legitimate, Arya said, keeping her voice steady. Everything in that file is real. Can you prove that? The documents speak for themselves. Email chains, financial records, signed contracts. If you do your job, you'll see it's all there. There was a pause on the other end. Who are you? Someone who wants the truth out there. That's not good enough. I need a name, a way to contact you. Otherwise, this just looks like a vendetta. Arya's jaw tightened. Ryan could see her weighing her options, trying to decide how much to reveal. My name is Arya Quinn, she said finally. I'm the daughter of Thomas Quinn, CEO of Quinn Development, and I'm the one who compiled that file. The silence that followed was deafening, then quietly. Holy shit. Will you run the story or not? Yeah, I'll run it, but I need to verify everything first. Can we meet? No, use the documents. They're enough. Ms. Quinn, that's all you're getting. If you want the story, you'll have to work for it. Arya hung up before he could respond, her hand shaking as she set the phone down. Ryan reached across the table, steadying her. You did good. I just painted a target on my back. You were already a target. Now you're a target with a voice. Arya looked at him, her expression torn between fear and determination. What if this doesn't work? What if he doesn't run the story? Then we find someone who will. But they didn't have to wait long. By that afternoon, David Chen's story was live on the news station's website. It was cautious, hedged with phrases like alleged and unconfirmed reports. But it was out there, and within hours, other outlets started picking it up. Ryan watched the coverage on his phone during his lunch break at the rail yard, Marcus looking over his shoulder. Quinn Development? Marcus said, frowning. Isn't that the company trying to buy this place? Yeah. Ryan's stomach twisted. Looks like they've been playing dirty. Marcus read through the article, his frown deepening. Bribing city officials, burying environmental reports. Jesus, if this is true, they should all be in jail. It's true. The words slipped out before Ryan could stop them. Marcus looked at him sharply. How do you know? Ryan hesitated, then decided there was no point in lying. The woman's staying with me. She's the one who leaked it. Marcus's eyes went wide. The mystery friend? She's Thomas Quinn's daughter? Yeah. And she's living in your apartment? Yeah. Marcus let out a low whistle. Man, you don't do anything halfway, do you? Ryan didn't answer. He was too busy reading the comments section, watching as people debated whether the allegations were real or just a disgruntled employee making things up. Some called for investigations. Others dismissed it as gossip. But the seed was planted, and seeds had a way of growing. When Ryan got home that evening, Arya was sitting on the couch with Lily, both of them watching a cartoon about talking animals. Lily was laughing at something on screen, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around them. Arya looked up when Ryan walked in, and he could see the tension in her shoulders. It's out there, she said quietly. I know. I saw. And people are talking. That's a start. Arya nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Ryan wanted to tell her it would be okay, that the story would gain traction, and her father would back off. But he'd learned a long time ago not to make promises he couldn't keep. That night, after Lily was in bed, Ryan and Arya sat on the couch together, the TV on, but neither of them watching it. They were both too wired, too aware of the fact that they'd just kicked a hornet's nest, and now they were waiting to see how bad the swarm would be. Do you regret it? Arya asked suddenly. Ryan looked at her. Regret what? Helping me. Getting involved in this. No. You should. Arya's voice was small. I've put you and Lily in danger. I've dragged you into my family's mess. You should regret it. Ryan reached over, taking her hand. I don't, and I won't. No matter what happens. Arya's eyes filled with tears. Why are you so damn good? I'm not. Ryan laughed, but it came out strained. Trust me, I'm not. I've made plenty of mistakes. But this? He squeezed her hand. This isn't one of them. Arya leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Ryan wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. They sat like that for a long time, neither of them speaking, just holding on. The next few days were a blur. More outlets picked up the story. David Chen did a follow-up piece with quotes from former Quinn Development employees who corroborated the allegations. The city announced an investigation into the zoning approvals. And Thomas Quinn issued a public statement denying everything, calling the accusations baseless and promising legal action against anyone who spread them. Arya watched it all unfold with a mixture of vindication and terror. Every time her father's face appeared on screen, she flinched. Every time a new article came out, she checked the comments obsessively, looking for signs that people believed the story. "You need to stop," Ryan told her one night, gently closing her laptop. "You're going to drive yourself crazy." "I need to know what they're saying." "No, you don't. You did your part. Now let it play out." Arya shook her head. It's not that simple." "Yeah, it is." Ryan pulled the laptop away from her, setting it on the coffee table. "You told the truth. Whatever happens next is on them, not you." Arya wanted to believe him, but she'd spent too many years watching her family manipulate the truth to think it was that straightforward. 2 days later, her fears were confirmed. Ryan was at work when he got the call. It was Arya, her voice shaking so badly he could barely understand her. "Ryan, you need to come home. Now." "What's wrong?" "Just, please, come home." Ryan didn't ask questions. He told Marcus he had an emergency and left, driving faster than he should have through midday traffic. When he burst through the apartment door, Arya was standing in the middle of the living room, her face pale, a letter clutched in her hand. "What happened?" Ryan demanded. Arya handed him the letter without a word. It was from a law firm Ryan had never heard of. The language was dense, full of legal jargon, but the message was clear. Arya was being sued for defamation, theft of corporate property, and breach of fiduciary duty. They were asking for damages in the amount of $5 million. Ryan read it twice, his heart sinking. "This is a scare tactic." "It's working." Arya's voice was flat. "I don't have $5 million. I don't have $5,000. If they win this, I'm done." "They won't win. You have proof. Proof I stole from them. That's the theft charge. They're going to argue that everything in the file is inadmissible because I took it illegally." Ryan set the letter down, his mind racing. "Then we get you a lawyer, someone who can fight this." "With what money?" Arya laughed, but it was hollow. "I'm working at a diner, Ryan. I can't afford a lawyer who can go up against my father's legal team." "Then we'll figure something out." There's nothing to figure out." Arya sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. "I knew this would happen. I knew they'd come after me. I just thought, I don't know what I thought." Ryan sat down next to her, pulling her into his arms. "We're not giving up. You hear me? We're not." But even as he said it, he could feel the walls closing in. The lawsuit was just the beginning. Over the next week, things got worse. The news coverage shifted, focusing less on Quinn Development's corruption and more on Arya's motives. Opinion pieces popped up questioning whether she was a whistleblower or just a bitter daughter trying to destroy her family. Someone leaked details about Arya's past, a DUI from when she was 19, a short stint in rehab for anxiety medication. None of it was relevant, but it didn't matter. The narrative was shifting, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Arya stopped going to work. She barely left the couch. Ryan watched her withdraw into herself, watched the fight drain out of her, and it killed him. "Talk to me," he said one night, sitting down next to her. "There's nothing to talk about." "Arya, I failed, Ryan. I tried to do the right thing, and I failed. My father's going to win, and everyone's going to think I'm a liar, and—" Her voice broke. "And you and Lily are going to get caught in the crossfire. We're already in this crossfire. We chose to be." "You didn't choose this." Arya gestured at the laptop, at the stack of legal documents on the coffee table. "You didn't choose to have your name dragged through the mud because you were stupid enough to help me." Ryan grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "Stop. You're not stupid, and I don't regret helping you. Got it?" Arya's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to do." "Then let me figure it out." "How?" Ryan didn't have an answer, but he refused to let her see that. The next day, Ryan made a decision. He called David Chen, the reporter who'd first broken the story, and asked to meet. They agreed on a coffee shop halfway across town, neutral territory. Chen was younger than Ryan had expected, probably mid-20s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a nervous energy that reminded Ryan of Lily after too much sugar. "Thanks for meeting me," Ryan said, sliding into the booth across from him. No problem. Your message said it was about Arya Quinn. Yeah. Ryan leaned forward, keeping his voice low. She's getting destroyed out there. The lawsuit, the hit pieces, it's all coordinated. Her father's trying to bury her before the investigation gains traction. Chen nodded. I figured as much. Thomas Quinn doesn't play nice. Can you help? Help how? Write another story. Focus on the evidence, not on her. Remind people why this matters. Chen looked uncomfortable. I appreciate what you're trying to do, but my editor's already pushing back. Says the story's getting too messy, too personal. They don't want to be seen as taking sides. This isn't about sides, it's about the truth. The truth doesn't sell papers. Drama does. Chen sighed, running a hand through his hair. Look, I believe Arya. I think she's telling the truth. But unless something changes, unless there's new evidence or a major development, I don't know if I can justify another piece. Ryan's hands curled into fists under the table. So you're just going to let her hang? I'm not letting anyone hang. I'm a reporter, not a crusader. I did my job. I broke the story. What happens next is out of my hands. Ryan wanted to argue. Wanted to tell Chen that doing his job meant following through, not abandoning the story when it got difficult. But he could see it wouldn't make a difference. Thanks for your time, Ryan said, standing. Chen looked up at him, guilt flickering across his face. For what it's worth, I hope she comes out of this okay. Ryan didn't respond. He just walked out, the bitter taste of defeat sitting heavy on his tongue. When he got home, Arya was on the phone, her voice tight and controlled. She glanced up when Ryan walked in, holding up a finger to signal she'd be done in a minute. I understand, she was saying. No, I don't have legal representation yet. Yes, I'm aware of the deadline. A pause. Thank you for letting me know. She hung up, setting the phone down carefully like it might shatter. That was the city attorney's office, she said. They're dropping the investigation into Quinn development. Not enough evidence to proceed. Ryan felt the floor drop out from under him. What? They said the documents I provided were compelling, but without corroboration from current employees or city officials, they can't build a case. Arya's laugh was sharp, humorless. Funny how no one wants to corroborate when my father's lawyers are threatening lawsuits. There has to be something we can do. There isn't. Arya stood, wrapping her arms around herself. It's over, Ryan. My father won, and Her voice cracked. I made everything worse for nothing. Ryan crossed the room, pulling her into his arms. She resisted at first, then collapsed against him, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for days. I'm sorry, she kept saying, over and over. I'm so sorry. Ryan held her tighter, wishing he could take the pain away, wishing he could fix this. But for the first time since Arya had stumbled into his life, he didn't have a plan. He just had her, broken and hurting, and the sinking realization that sometimes trying to do the right thing wasn't enough. The days that followed felt like watching a slow-motion car crash. Arya barely ate, barely slept. She'd sit on the couch for hours staring at nothing, or she'd pace the apartment like a caged animal looking for an exit that didn't exist. Ryan tried to give her space, tried to be patient, but watching her fall apart was tearing him up inside. Lily noticed too. She'd ask why Arya wasn't playing with her anymore, why she looked so sad all the time. Ryan didn't have good answers. He told her Arya wasn't feeling well, that she needed rest, but Lily was 6, not stupid. She knew something was wrong. One evening, Ryan came home from work to find Lily sitting next to Arya on the couch, her small hand resting on Arya's arm. It's okay to be sad, Lily was saying, her voice serious in that way kids got when they were trying to sound grown up. Daddy says sometimes we just need to feel our feelings. Arya looked at her, and something in her expression cracked. Your daddy's right. Are you going to feel better soon? I hope so, sweetheart. Lily nodded, satisfied with that answer. She climbed into Arya's lap, wrapping her arms around her neck. I'm going to hug you until you feel better. Arya closed her eyes, holding Lily tight. Ryan watched from the doorway, his throat tight. Whatever mess they were in, whatever was coming next, moments like this made it worth it. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Ryan found Arya in the kitchen making tea she probably wouldn't drink. Her movements were mechanical, disconnected. I need to tell you something, she said without looking at him. Ryan leaned against the counter. Okay. I'm leaving. The words hit him like a punch. What? I can't stay here anymore. It's not fair to you or Lily. My father's not going to stop coming after me, and as long as I'm here, you're both targets. Arya finally looked at him, her eyes red-rimmed. I should have left weeks ago. Where are you going to go? I don't know. Somewhere far. Somewhere he can't find me. Ryan's jaw tightened. Running didn't work the first time. What makes you think it'll work now? Because this time I won't make the mistake of getting close to anyone. Her voice was flat, final. I won't drag anyone else down with me. You're not dragging us down. Yes, I am. The lawsuit, the media attention. Ryan, people know your name now. They know you're connected to me. What happens when my father's lawyers come after you next? When they start digging into your life, trying to find leverage? Let them dig. I've got nothing to hide. Everyone has something to hide. Arya set the teacup down, her hands shaking. And even if you don't, they'll make something up. That's what they do. They destroy people, Ryan. And I won't let them destroy you. Ryan crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing her shoulders. You don't get to make that choice for me. Yes, I do, because I'm the one who brought this into your life. And I'm the one who chose to help. I knew the risks. You didn't know anything. Arya pulled away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. You thought you were helping some girl who got beat up. You didn't sign up for lawsuits and investigations and having your life turned inside out. Maybe not, but I'm not running just because things got hard. This isn't hard, Ryan. This is impossible. My father has unlimited resources, unlimited connections. We can't beat him. So we just give up? That's your solution? Arya's eyes flashed with anger. Yes, we give up, because fighting him will only make things worse. For who? You? Because from where I'm standing, things are already pretty bad for you. For Lily, Arya's voice cracked. What happens when your daughter becomes collateral damage in this war? When she gets hurt because you were too stubborn to let me go? Ryan felt ice slide down his spine. You think my father won't go after her? You think he's above using a 6-year-old to get to me? Arya laughed, but it sounded broken. You don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. Then tell me. What? Tell me what he's capable of. Stop dancing around it and just tell me. Arya stared at him, and for a moment Ryan thought she might actually do it. But then she looked away, her shoulders sagging. It doesn't matter. I'm leaving tomorrow. Like hell you are. You can't stop me. Watch me. Ryan moved to block the doorway. You're not running, not this time. Ryan, no. Listen to me. You came here because you didn't have anywhere else to go. You stayed because we gave you a reason to. And now you're trying to leave because you're scared. I get it. But running isn't going to solve anything. It'll keep you safe. I don't want to be safe. Ryan stopped, the words dying in his throat. Arya's eyes locked on his. You want what? Ryan could have lied, could have deflected or changed the subject, but he was tired of dancing around the truth. I want you to stay, he said quietly. I want you here, with me, with us. Arya's breath hitched. Ryan, I know it's complicated. I know we've got a mess to clean up, but I don't care. I want you to stay. Arya shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You don't mean that. Yeah, I do. Why? Why would you want me to stay after everything I've put you through? Ryan closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. Because you make me laugh. Because Lily lights up when you're around. Because when I come home, the apartment doesn't feel empty anymore. He brushed a tear away with his thumb. Because I'm falling for you, Arya, and I'm pretty sure you're falling for me too. Arya let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You're an idiot. Probably. This is never going to work. Maybe not. But I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. Arya searched his face, and Ryan could see the war playing out in her expression. Fear against hope. Self-preservation against the desperate need to believe in something good. Okay, she whispered finally. Okay? Okay. I'll stay. But if things get worse, if your family gets dragged into this, we'll deal with it together. Arya nodded, and Ryan pulled her into his arms. She clung to him like he was the only solid thing in a world that had gone sideways, and Ryan held her just as tight. They stayed like that for a long time, neither of them willing to let go. And somewhere in the back of Ryan's mind, a voice whispered that he was making a mistake, that caring this much about someone who came with this much baggage was going to destroy him. But when Arya tilted her head up and kissed him, soft and desperate and full of everything she couldn't say, Ryan decided he didn't care. Some mistakes were worth making. The next morning brought an unexpected development. Ryan was getting ready for work when his phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Adler? This is Margaret Reeves from the North Creek Workers Union." Ryan frowned. "I didn't know we had a union." "We didn't until 3 days ago." Margaret's voice was brisk, businesslike. "I've been organizing workers at the rail yard. We've got enough signatures to file for official recognition, and we'd like to meet with you." "Me? Why?" "Because you're the one whose name keeps popping up in articles about Quinn development, and because we need someone who understands what's at stake." A pause. "We want to fight this, Mr. Adler, but we need help." Ryan glanced toward the bedroom, where Arya was still sleeping. "What kind of help?" "Information, strategy. Someone who can connect us with people who know how to take on corporations like Quinn Development." Margaret's voice softened. "I know you're in a difficult position, but if what that file says is true, we're all about to lose our jobs. And I'll be damned if I'm going down without a fight." Ryan felt something shift in his chest. "When do you want to meet?" "Tonight, 7 o'clock. Mooney's Bar on 5th. I'll be there." He hung up, staring at the phone in his hand. This was exactly what Arya had been afraid of, getting pulled deeper into the mess. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to actually do something instead of just reacting. When Arya woke up an hour later, Ryan told her about the call. She listened without interrupting, her expression carefully neutral. "You're going to meet with them," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, and you want me to come with you?" "Only if you're comfortable with it. I know it's risky." "I'll come." Arya stood, running her hands through her hair. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right. That means organizing, building pressure, making enough noise that my father can't just make this disappear." Ryan studied her, trying to gauge whether this was genuine determination or just her trying to make him happy. "You sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." That evening, they left Lily with Marcus's wife and headed to Mooney's Bar. It was the kind of place that smelled like stale beer and fried food, with sticky floors and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 80s. A group of about 20 people were gathered in the back room, most of them faces Ryan recognized from the rail yard. Margaret Reeves turned out to be a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the kind of presence that made people listen when she spoke. She shook Ryan's hand firmly, then turned to Arya. "You're the whistleblower," Margaret said. Arya nodded. "I'm the one who leaked the file, yes." "Good. We need to talk." Margaret gestured to the table where the others were sitting. "Everyone, this is Ryan Adler and Arya Quinn. They're here to help us figure out how to stop Quinn Development from shutting us down." The room erupted in questions. How much time did they have? Was the investigation really dead? What about the environmental violations? Could they sue? Margaret held up a hand. "One at a time. Let's start with what we know." Over the next 2 hours, they pieced together a plan. It wasn't elegant, and it wasn't guaranteed to work, but it was something. They'd organize protests at City Hall. They'd reach out to environmental groups who might be willing to file their own complaints. They'd use social media to amplify the story, make it too big for the city to ignore. And they'd keep pushing until someone listened. "What about the lawsuit?" someone asked, looking at Arya. "If Quinn's suing you, won't that make it harder to fight back?" "Maybe," Arya admitted, "but it also proves I'm a threat. If my father wasn't worried about what I know, he wouldn't be trying so hard to shut me up." "So we use that," Margaret said. "We make him the villain. Rich CEO, going after his own daughter to protect his bottom line. That's a story people will pay attention to." Arya's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Okay." As the meeting wound down, people started filtering out, shaking hands, and promising to show up for the protests. Ryan was talking to one of the older workers about permit requirements when he noticed Arya standing alone by the bar, staring at her phone. He excused himself and walked over. "You all right?" Arya didn't look up. "I got an email from my father's lawyer. They're willing to drop the lawsuit." Ryan's heart jumped. "That's good, right? There's a condition? Arya's voice was hollow. I have to publicly recant everything I said, admit the documents were fabricated, and sign an NDA that prevents me from ever discussing Quinn development again. They want you to lie. They want me to disappear. Arya finally looked at him, her eyes bleak. And if I don't, they're moving forward with the lawsuit. They'll tie me up in court for years, drain whatever resources I have, make sure I never work again. Ryan felt rage bubble up in his chest. Tell them to go to hell. Ryan, I mean it. Tell them no. We'll figure out the lawsuit. We'll get you a lawyer. Find a way to fight it. With what money? Arya's voice rose, drawing looks from the few people still lingering. She lowered it again, but the frustration was still there. I'm broke, Ryan. I've got maybe $200 to my name. I can't afford a lawyer who can go up against my father's legal team. I can barely afford rent. You're not paying rent. That's not the point. The point is I don't have options. Either I take the deal and disappear, or I spend the next decade fighting a losing battle. Ryan grabbed her hand. It's not a losing battle if we're fighting together. You keep saying that, but what happens when you lose your job? When the rail yard shuts down and you can't find work because you're tied to me? What happens when Lily's college fund disappears because you're helping me pay legal fees? Arya pulled her hand away. I can't ask you to sacrifice everything for a fight we might not win. You're not asking. I'm offering. Well, maybe I don't want you to. Arya grabbed her jacket off the bar. Maybe I'm tired of being the reason everything falls apart. She walked out before Ryan could stop her, leaving him standing alone with the sinking realization that no matter what he said, she didn't believe they could win. And maybe she was right. Ryan found her outside, sitting on the curb with her head in her hands. He sat down next to her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I'm not giving up on you, he said quietly. You should. Yeah, well, I'm stubborn like that. Arya let out a shaky laugh. I've noticed. They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the city washing over them, cars passing, distant sirens, the muffled thump of music from inside the bar. What if we can't win? Arya asked finally. Then we lose. But at least we'll lose knowing we tried. That's not very comforting. I'm not very good at comforting. Ryan bumped his shoulder against hers. But I'm good at showing up. And I'm not going anywhere. Arya turned to look at him, and Ryan saw the fear still there, but also something else. Something that looked like trust. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, we fight. But we do it smart. No more half measures. No more hoping someone else will fix this. If we're going to take down my father, we need to hit him where it hurts. Ryan felt a surge of hope. What are you thinking? Arya's eyes hardened. I'm thinking it's time to release the rest of the file. The decision wasn't made lightly. They spent the next 3 days going through every document, every email, every piece of evidence Arya had compiled. This time, they weren't holding back. They were releasing everything, the bribes, the environmental violations, the fraudulent contracts, all of it. This is going to make things worse before they get better, Arya warned as she queued up the files for upload. My father's going to come after us with everything he has. Let him. Ryan stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder. We're ready. Arya took a deep breath, then hit send. The files went to every major news outlet in the state. Environmental groups, federal agencies, anyone who might care enough to investigate. And this time, they didn't send them anonymously. Arya attached her name, her statement, and a detailed explanation of how she'd obtained the documents. It was a declaration of war, and there was no taking it back. The response was immediate. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Cable news picked it up. Social media exploded. Environmental activists started organizing protests. Federal investigators announced they were opening a preliminary inquiry, and Thomas Quinn's carefully constructed empire started to crack. But victory came with a price. The morning after the files went public, Ryan woke up to find 2 men in suits standing outside his apartment building. They weren't cops. Their suits were too expensive for that, but they had that same air of authority. Ryan Adler, one of them asked as Ryan approached with coffee for him and Arya. Who's asking? The man pulled out a badge. FBI. We'd like to ask you some questions about Arya Quinn and her allegations against Quinn Development Corporation. Ryan's stomach dropped, but he kept his expression neutral. I don't know anything about that. We have evidence suggesting otherwise. May we come in? Not without a warrant. The agent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We can get one if we need to, but I thought you might prefer to cooperate voluntarily. Ryan glanced up at his apartment window, where he could see the curtain twitch. Arya was watching. Give me a minute, he said. He went upstairs, ignoring the agent's protests. When he opened the door, Arya was already packing a bag. I heard them, she said. I need to go. No. Ryan took the bag from her hands. You need to talk to them. Tell them everything you told me. This is what we wanted. Federal investigators taking this seriously. They're not here to help me, Ryan. They're here to build a case. And if they decide I'm a liability, they'll throw me under the bus to get to my father. Maybe. But running now makes you look guilty. Arya's hands were shaking. What if they arrest me? Then we get you a lawyer. A real one. Margaret mentioned someone from the ACLU who might help. We'll figure it out. Arya looked at him, and Ryan could see her trying to decide whether to trust him, whether to trust that this might actually work out. Okay, she said finally, but you're staying with me. I'm not doing this alone. Wouldn't dream of it. They went downstairs together hand in hand to face whatever was coming next. The interview lasted 4 hours. The FBI agents, there were 3 of them now, plus a stenographer, asked questions about everything. How Arya got the documents, why she leaked them, what her relationship was to Ryan, whether she'd been in contact with anyone from Quinn Development since she left. Arya answered everything as honestly as she could, her voice steady even when Ryan could see her hands trembling under the table. She told them about the bribes, the environmental violations, the systematic corruption her father had built his empire on, and she told them she was willing to testify if it meant stopping him. When it was finally over, the lead agent, a woman named Chen, who reminded Ryan uncomfortably of a shark, gave Arya a business card. We'll be in touch, she said. Don't leave town. After they left, Ryan and Arya sat in the apartment in stunned silence. Lily was still at school, giving them a few more hours before they had to pretend everything was normal. That went better than I expected, Arya said finally. Yeah? They didn't arrest me. That's a win. Ryan laughed despite himself, setting the bar pretty low there. I've learned to take victories where I can get them. Arya leaned against him, exhausted. Thank you for staying. Where else would I be? Arya didn't answer, but her hand found his, and they sat like that until Lily came home, bursting through the door with stories about her day that felt like the most normal thing in the world. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ryan found Arya on the couch with her laptop. She wasn't working, just staring at the screen, at the dozens of articles about Quinn Development's collapse. You did it, Ryan said, sitting down next to her. We did it, Arya corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Sure you could have. You're tougher than you think. Arya closed the laptop, turning to face him. I don't feel tough. I feel terrified. That's because you're smart enough to know this isn't over. Do you think we'll win? Ryan thought about lying, about telling her everything would be fine. But he'd never lied to her before, and he wasn't about to start now. I don't know, he admitted, but I know we've got a better chance now than we did a month ago. And I know you're not fighting this alone anymore. Arya's eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve you. Yeah, you do. Ryan pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. You deserve a hell of a lot more than what life's given you, but I'm working on it. Arya laughed through her tears. You're ridiculous. Yeah, well, you're stuck with me now. I guess there are worse things to be stuck with. They sat together in the quiet apartment, holding on to each other like they were the only solid things in a world that kept shifting beneath their feet. And for the first time in weeks, Ryan felt like maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. Even if the road ahead was still full of landmines. The federal investigation moved slower than Ryan had hoped and faster than Arya had feared. Weeks turned into months, each day bringing new developments that felt both monumental and insufficient. Quinn Development's stock price tanked. 3 city council members resigned. Thomas Quinn appeared on television denying everything with the kind of confidence only money could buy. But the cracks in his armor were showing. The ACLU lawyer Margaret had mentioned, a woman named Sandra Ortiz, who wore power suits and had a reputation for taking on impossible cases, agreed to represent Arya pro bono. The first time they met, she'd looked Arya straight in the eye and said, Your father's going to try to destroy you. You ready for that? Arya had nodded, though Ryan could see the fear beneath her composure. "I'm ready," Sandra had smiled. "Good, because we're about to make his life very difficult." True to her word, Sandra filed a countersuit against Quinn Development for wrongful termination, emotional distress, and retaliation against a whistleblower. It was aggressive, risky, and exactly what they needed. Because suddenly, Arya wasn't just a defendant, she was a plaintiff. Someone fighting back instead of just running. The media loved it. Daughter versus father. David versus Goliath. The story had everything people wanted, and Arya's face was everywhere. Ryan hated it. Hated watching strangers pick apart her life on social media. Hated the photographers who started showing up outside their building. Hated the way Lily asked why people kept taking pictures of them. But Arya handled it with a grace Ryan didn't know she possessed. She did interviews. She spoke at rallies organized by the Workers' Union. She stood in front of cameras and told her story over and over, each time a little stronger, a little more certain. "You're good at this," Ryan told her one night after she'd done a live interview with a national news network. Arya shrugged, exhausted. "I'm good at pretending." "That's not pretending, that's you." She looked at him, and Ryan saw the doubt still there. The voice that told her she wasn't enough, that she'd never be enough. He recognized it because he had one too. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," she admitted, "for my father to find some way to make this all go away. He can't. Not anymore. Too many people are watching. He's found ways before." Ryan pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "He's never dealt with you before. Not like this." Arya leaned into him, and they stayed like that until the weight of the day finally caught up with her and she fell asleep against his shoulder. Ryan carried her to bed, tucked her in, and then sat in the dark living room thinking about how much had changed in 6 months. How a stranger bleeding in an alley had become the center of his world. How fighting someone else's battle had given him something he hadn't realized he was missing: purpose. The trial date for the countersuit was set for early December, which gave them 3 months to prepare. Sandra warned them it would be brutal. Thomas Quinn's lawyers would attack Arya's credibility, dig up every mistake she'd ever made, paint her as an ungrateful daughter trying to profit off her family's name. "They're going to make you the villain," Sandra said during one of their prep sessions. "Can you handle that?" Arya's jaw tightened. "I've been the villain in my father's story my whole life. At least this time I get to tell my side." The depositions started in September. Ryan wasn't allowed in the room, but he waited outside every time, pacing the hallway while Arya sat across from lawyers who treated her like a hostile witness. She'd come out pale and shaking, but she never broke, never gave them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "What did they ask you today?" Ryan would ask on the drive home. "Everything. My childhood, my education, why I left, why I came back, whether I ever loved my family or if I was always planning to betray them." Arya stared out the window. "They asked if I was sleeping with you, if that's why you're helping me." Ryan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you say?" "I said my personal life wasn't relevant to the case." She glanced at him. "But for the record, I am sleeping with you, so they weren't wrong." Ryan couldn't help but smile despite the tension. "You want to make that official at some point? Or are we just going to keep pretending we're roommates?" Arya laughed, and it sounded almost normal. "Is that your way of asking me to be your girlfriend?" "Maybe." "Is it working?" "It's terrible, but yes." She reached over, lacing her fingers through his. "I'll be your girlfriend, even though we're both probably crazy." "Definitely crazy," Ryan agreed, "but I'm good with that." They drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, and when they pulled into the parking lot, Arya didn't let go of his hand. October brought the first real victory. The environmental violations Arya had documented resulted in federal charges against Quinn Development. The EPA announced they were blocking the North Creek development pending a full investigation. And while that didn't save the rail yard jobs, the company had already started layoffs, it meant the contaminated land wouldn't be turned into housing. Margaret organized a celebration at Mooney's bar, and for the first time in months, people weren't just angry, they were hopeful. "This is because of you," one of the workers told Arya, shaking her hand. "You saved lives. You know that, right?" Arya looked uncomfortable with the praise, but she nodded. "I just did what anyone should have done." "Most people don't," the man said. "Most people look the other way. You didn't." After he walked away, Ryan found Arya outside, leaning against the brick wall with her eyes closed. You okay? He asked. I don't know how to feel about this. Arya opened her eyes, looking at him. People keep thanking me, but I'm the reason they knew about the contamination in the first place. My family did this. My father poisoned that land and was going to build on it anyway, and you stopped him. After years of saying nothing, Ryan stepped closer. You can't change the past. You can only choose what to do now. And right now you're choosing to fight. That counts for something. Arya searched his face. Does it? Yeah, it does. She kissed him then, right there against the wall with the sounds of celebration drifting out from inside the bar. And Ryan thought that maybe redemption wasn't about erasing your mistakes. It was about refusing to let them define you. The week before the trial, Thomas Quinn made his move. Not through lawyers or press releases, but through a phone call that came late at night when Ryan and Arya were both half asleep. Arya's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She squinted at the screen, then went completely still. It's him, she whispered. Ryan sat up. Don't answer it. But Arya was already swiping to accept, putting it on speaker. Hello, Arya. Thomas Quinn's voice was smooth, measured, the voice of a man used to being obeyed. I think it's time we talked. We have nothing to talk about. I disagree. This trial, it's going to hurt both of us. You know that. Your lawyers, my lawyers, they'll all get rich while we tear each other apart in public. Is that really what you want? I want you to face consequences for what you've done. And you think putting me in prison will accomplish that? You think it'll undo the damage? Bring back the jobs? Thomas's voice hardened. All you'll do is destroy what's left of our family. Your brothers won't forgive you. Your mother certainly won't. I don't need their forgiveness. Don't you? A pause. Arya, I'm offering you a way out. Drop the countersuit. Stop cooperating with the investigators. And I'll drop the lawsuit against you. We'll both walk away. You can have your freedom, and I'll have my company. And the people you hurt? What do they get? A settlement. I'm prepared to offer compensation to anyone affected by the North Creek project. $20 million distributed among the workers. That's more than they'd get even if you win in court. Arya's hands were shaking. Ryan could see her trying to process, trying to figure out the trap hidden in the offer. Why now? She asked. Why offer this now? Because I'm tired, Arya. Tired of fighting my own daughter. Tired of seeing your face on television calling me a criminal. For the first time, Thomas's voice cracked. You're still my daughter. I still love you, and I'd like a chance to make things right. Ryan watched Arya's expression crumble. He saw the little girl who'd wanted her father's approval, who'd spent years trying to earn love that was always conditional. He saw her wavering. No, Ryan said loudly enough for Thomas to hear. Don't do this. Who's that? Thomas's voice sharpened. The boyfriend? The construction worker who's been filling your head with ideas about heroism? His name is Ryan, Arya said, her voice steadying. And he's not filling my head with anything. He's the first person who's ever been honest with me. Honest? He's using you. Can't you see that? He gets to play the hero while you risk everything. What happens when this is over and you're broke and unemployable? You think he'll still want you then? Ryan felt rage bubble up, but Arya spoke before he could. Yes, she said simply. I do. Because unlike you, Ryan doesn't love conditionally. He doesn't measure my worth by what I can do for him. Her voice grew stronger. You want to know why I'm doing this? It's not about the money or the jobs or even justice. It's because I spent my whole life believing I had to earn love by being useful, by being obedient, and I'm done. I'm done being the daughter you wanted and finally becoming the person I am. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, you're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Arya hung up before her father could respond. She set the phone down, her whole body trembling. I can't believe I just did that, she whispered. Ryan pulled her into his arms. I'm proud of you. I think I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Confronting your abuser usually comes with nausea. Arya let out a shaky laugh against his chest. Is that what he was? An abuser? Yeah, he was. Ryan pulled back just enough to look at her. And you just told him to go to hell. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Little of both, probably. Ryan kissed her forehead. But you did it, and now we see this through to the end. Arya nodded, but Ryan could feel her shaking. They stayed up the rest of the night, talking about nothing and everything until the sun came up and they had to face what came next. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Ryan took time off work, what was left of it anyway since the rail yard had officially shut down, and sat in the courtroom every single day. He watched Arya testify, watched her face her father across the room without flinching, watched her answer questions about her childhood, her relationship with her family, the moment she decided to steal the files and run. Thomas Quinn's lawyers were brutal. They showed photos of Arya at family events, smiling, playing the dutiful daughter. They brought in character witnesses who talked about her behavioral issues as a teenager, the time she'd crashed a car drunk, her stint in rehab. "You were troubled," one lawyer said, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "And instead of getting help, you chose to betray your family. Isn't that what this is really about? Rebellion?" "No," Arya said, her voice clear. "This is about accountability, something my family has never understood." They brought up her relationship with Ryan, implying she'd seduced him to gain an ally, suggested she'd fabricated evidence to get revenge, called her vindictive, unstable, manipulative. And through it all, Arya sat straight-backed and calm, refusing to give them the breakdown they wanted. When it was Sandra's turn, she tore into Quinn development with precision. She presented emails showing Thomas knew about the contamination, financial records proving the bribes, testimony from former employees who'd been fired for questioning the North Creek project. She called Ryan to the stand, and he told the truth about how Arya had come into his life, about the fear he'd seen in her eyes, about watching her choose to fight instead of run, even when it cost her everything. "Did she ever ask you for money?" Sandra asked. "No." "Did she ever try to manipulate you?" "No, she tried to leave multiple times. I'm the one who asked her to stay." "Why?" Ryan looked at Arya, sitting at the defendant's table with tears streaming down her face. "Because she deserved someone in her corner, and because I love her." The courtroom went silent. Sandra smiled. No further questions. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Ryan spent most of that time pacing the courthouse hallway, while Arya sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. "What if we lose?" she asked on the 3rd day. "Then we appeal." "Ryan, I mean it. We don't stop, not until they run out of ways to come after you." Arya looked at him, and Ryan saw exhaustion there, but also something else. Determination. "You really mean that?" "Yeah, I do." When the jury finally returned, Ryan held Arya's hand so tight he was probably cutting off circulation. But she didn't pull away. The foreman stood. "In the matter of Quinn versus Quinn Development Corporation, we find in favor of the plaintiff." The courtroom erupted. Arya made a sound that was half sob, half laugh, and Sandra pulled her into a hug while reporters scrambled for their phones. Ryan just sat there, letting the reality sink in. They'd won. The settlement was substantial, $3 million plus legal fees. More money than Ryan had seen in his life. Arya immediately donated half to the workers' union and environmental groups that had supported the fight. The rest she put toward restitution for families affected by Quinn Development's projects. "You're keeping some of it, right?" Ryan asked when she told him her plan. "Enough," Arya said. "Enough to start over. To build something that's actually mine." "What do you want to build?" Arya smiled. "I'm still figuring that out." The criminal charges against Thomas Quinn took longer to resolve, but eventually he pleaded guilty to fraud and bribery. He served 18 months in a minimum security facility and lost control of Quinn Development. His empire didn't crumble overnight, but it fractured piece by piece until it was a shadow of what it had been. Arya's mother never spoke to her again. Her brother sent occasional emails, mostly asking for money she didn't give. She grieved the family she'd lost, but she didn't regret the choice she'd made. "I'm lighter now," she told Ryan one night, months after the trial. "Like I've been carrying their weight my whole life and finally put it down." Ryan understood that. He'd carried his own weight for years, the responsibility of raising Lily alone, of proving he was enough. And somehow, sharing that weight with Arya had made it easier to bear. They didn't get a fairy tale ending. Ryan found work with another construction company, but the pay was worse and the hours longer. Arya started working with a nonprofit that helped whistleblowers navigate the legal system. Money was tight. There were arguments about bills and whose turn it was to pick up Lily and whether they could afford to fix the car or if they'd have to take the bus for another month. But there were also mornings where Ryan woke up to find Arya making breakfast with Lily, both of them covered in flour and laughing. There were evenings where they'd collapse on the couch, exhausted, and Arya would rest her head on his shoulder while they watched bad television. There were moments where Lily would call Arya Mom by accident, then look mortified. And Arya would just smile and say, "It's okay, sweetheart. I like it." 6 months after the trial, Ryan asked Arya to marry him. It wasn't romantic. They were doing dishes, and he just blurted it out. "Will you marry me?" Arya looked at him, hands dripping soapy water. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, I mean, if you want. No pressure. I want you here, permanently, officially." Arya set down the plate she was holding. "You know I'm a mess, right? I have trust issues and a family that hates me and probably PTSD from the trial." "I know. And you still want to marry me?" "Yeah, I do." Arya smiled, and it was the most genuine thing Ryan had ever seen. "Okay. Okay? Yeah, let's get married." They got married at City Hall 3 weeks later, with Lily as their flower girl and Marcus as the witness. Arya wore a dress she'd bought at a thrift store. Ryan wore the one suit he owned. It was simple and small and nothing like the wedding Arya's family would have thrown. It was perfect. That night, after Lily was asleep and they were lying in bed, Arya traced patterns on Ryan's chest. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found me that night?" she asked. "Sometimes." "What do you think?" Ryan thought about it. "I think I'd still be here, still working too hard, still raising Lily alone, still getting by." He pulled her closer. "But I wouldn't be happy. Not like this. I wouldn't be alive," Arya said quietly. "I was running out of options, out of hope, if you hadn't helped me." She trailed off. Ryan kissed the top of her head. "But I did, and you're here. That's what matters." They fell asleep like that, tangled together in the dark, and Ryan thought about how sometimes the best things in life came from the worst moments. How you couldn't choose what happened to you, but you could choose what you did with it. Arya had chosen to fight. She'd chosen to stand up to her father, to risk everything for people she barely knew, to rebuild herself from scratch. And Ryan had chosen to stand with her, even when it would have been easier to walk away. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been clean. But it had been real. And in the end, that was enough. 2 years later, Ryan stood in the backyard of the small house they'd managed to buy. Nothing fancy, just 3 bedrooms and a yard where Lily could play, watching Arya teach his daughter how to plant tomatoes. They were both covered in dirt, laughing as they argued about the proper depth for seeds. "You're doing it wrong," Lily insisted. "I've grown tomatoes before," Arya shot back. "Yeah, but mine are going to be bigger." "We'll see about that." Ryan smiled, turning his attention back to the grill, where burgers were probably burning. Marcus and his family were coming over, along with Margaret and a few others from the union. It was loud and chaotic, and nothing like the life Ryan had imagined for himself. It was better. Because the thing about redemption, Ryan had learned, was that it wasn't a destination. It was a choice you made every single day, a choice to be better than you were yesterday, to show up for the people who mattered, to fight for something worth fighting for. Arya had made that choice, so had Ryan, and somewhere in the mess of it all, they'd built something neither of them had expected. A family. Not perfect. Not easy. But unshakably real. And that was worth more than anything else in the world.